Good evening and welcome to the Ways and Means Committee meeting for today, Tuesday, November the 12th. I am Councilwoman Ty Atkins, President of the Gary Common Council, representing the 4th District and the Chair of the Ways and Means Committee. Joining me tonight, I have the following members of the Gary Common Council present here in the chamber: Councilman at Large Darren Washington, Council Representative of the 6th District, Councilman Dwight Williams, our parliamentarian Councilman of the 5th District, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell. In addition to those members of the body, we do in fact have our fiscal advisor, Mr. Bill Outlaw, as well as our legal advisor, Attorney Windsor Williams, here with us tonight. We have a total of 7 ordinances that was in fact published on the agenda. One was an error, which is CPO 2024-63, that actually was assigned and has already been reviewed in the Planning and Development Committee. So I will read the balance of those ordinances that is listed on the agenda in the order that we will cover them. CPO 2024-64, an ordinance amending ordinance number 9604, approving an ARPA spending plan out of public health and negative economic impacts category for medical debt buy-down assistance. CPO 2024-65, which is an ordinance for the City of Gary Lake County, Indiana, authorizing additional appropriations for the American Rescue Plan Act Fund 2487 for medical debt buy-down assistance under public health and negative economic impacts. CPO 2024-66, which is an ordinance amending ordinance number 9604, approving an ARPA spending plan out of revenue loss category for Gary Public Transportation Corporation matching funds. CPO 2024-67, which is the corresponding appropriation ordinance for the same ask. CPO 2024-70, an ordinance amending ordinance number 9604, approving an ARPA spending plan out of public health and negative economic impacts category for the new animal shelter facility. And the 2024-71, which is the last ordinance, was in fact the appropriation ordinance companion to 70, asking again for the appropriations for the same ask. The administration has asked for us to remove CPO 2024-64 and 65 from review for tonight, and I will grant that, colleagues. So that leaves us with the balance of the following ordinances: 66, 67, 70, and 71. Again, 66 and 67 are companions, and 70 and 71 are companions as well. We'll start with 66, and we'll review 66 and 67 together. This is respected to the ask to support funding for the Gary Public Transportation Corporation, for matching funds. Is there a member from the administration or from GPTC who will be doing an overview? Good evening. We need you to press the right button on the bottom. The microphone will turn green.
There it is.
Yes.
All right.
Can you state your name and title for the record?
Curtis Whitaker, I'm financial advisor at Gary Public Transportation Corporation, and our GM is on her way. So if you could give her a few minutes, she is, I believe, parking and can come here and share, or if you want me to go forward.
Absolutely. You can go ahead and start since the meeting has started, and then we'll, if in fact we're still on this respective ordinance, we'll allow commentary from the executive director.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and members of the public. Gary Public Transportation Corporation is seeking to do a number of things with the ARPA funding. One of those, and we're thankful for the category that that is allowed, the loss of revenue, that allows us to match those funds with federal funds from the FTA. And so we want to be able to purchase 9 buses for GPTC. Those buses would be refurbished buses that we will utilize to retire some old buses and some old fleet that we have, and to put more buses on the street. We have some additional projects that we're looking to do at GPTC, both at the bus barn on 35th and at the building that we're in on Broadway. And both our finance director and our interim GM have arrived. Ms. Dillard, we're up. So you can come and share some more about the $750,000 request.
So before you go any further, first of all, we're looking at 2466. You just mentioned $750,000, but what is stated in this particular ordinance is $700,000. And 2467, it says 750. So what is the correct ask?
750 is the correct ask. Good
Okay.
evening.
So we would need that to be updated from the team. Okay.
So the overview of what we're doing right now has a lot to do with building the fleet, which is what the narrative was that when we first came to speak to you as the consul. We had about 10 buses as we have expanded, not just our Gary service, but our regional service. And as we're looking at that, what we needed to do was get rid of some of these old buses, more miles than they're supposed to have. But wanted to make sure that we had the dollars. We weren't going to go underwater, but we at the same time didn't cut the services. What we did was try to continue using the operations for making sure that the most populated routes were done efficiently. We looked at timing, we looked at what was needed, and we tried to make sure what you call the BMX, which is Broadway, continued doing at least 2 to 3 buses, making sure that that time, particularly working hours, people could get from all the way north, all the way south. And all the way south is that turning point right at like 102nd in Broadway. And so working through that has been successful. We worked with Hard Rock on some stops that they were looking at and how they wanted to look at those coming more often. Those buses aren't able to do any more than what they're already doing. But we told them we would definitely look at increasing as soon as we knew exactly what more buses meant. Right now, I don't know if Mr. Whitaker mentioned the buses. Okay, so we have negotiated for 9 buses. We will be working with those buses as renovated buses. And that assessment was done inclusive of the mechanics, the company, and us negotiating a price. I do want the consul to know this pricing started at $112,000 a bus. So for us to get to 9 buses, we had some sharpening of pencils that we had to make them understand how important this was for us to move forward and be a service, a continued infrastructure need for Northwest Indiana, not just Gary. So we are moving forward with that. They did come down to the price. And we definitely wanted to get to where we are at the 750.
Thank you. Thank you so much. At this time, I'll ask my colleague, I'll ask, do you want to add anything, Ms. McMillan? Okay. Very good.
All right.
Members of the council, any input, questions, or comments related to 2024-66? No? We're good? Okay. I do have one question. I know that this was a portion of an ask of, I say, interlocal or more of a comprehensive approach to all alternative funding sources. So could you talk a little bit about that, about the total need that GPTC was searching for, and all of the partners is the word that I'm going to use, who collectively have came together to support the efforts, and anything else that you can provide, whatever,
Sure.
dollar amount that each entity has already confirmed or signed up to support it, if that would be good.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. One of the things that I want to start off with is the Common Council in the city of Gary have from the very beginning said, what do you need? What do you need to make this happen? So that was helpful because as we looked at other givers, we could easily say the Common Council and the mayor were supportive of this. This was not us being out there by ourselves saying this is something we need to do. Money that came immediately, the Lake County Council. Thank you to Commissioner Allen. Thank you to Commissioner Tippy, thank you to Commissioner Repay. They came in, they listened to Lake County Council, who we had to go through first. Thank you to Charlie Brown. Thank you to our late Corey Slay. They took it on the first read and said, this makes sense. And so I was quite pleased when we got a call. Mr. Whitaker and I actually went over to see Mr. Allen to make a bid for the conversation. And he said, I already know. He said, go home and I'll get back to you. So again, that connection, I thank the city for those relationships. We also had Legacy Foundation, that we were doing some things with, and they have said, we don't have the money we want to have, but we're going to help you out on transportation. And we appreciate that. And the big one, Greyhound. Greyhound came in as we talked about expansion and sustainability. They immediately, this one's a 1 year, so it wasn't an overnight conversation. This conversation started in October of 23. And what we did was say, the president of Greyhound, take a look at what we've got. If you can find better infrastructure, come back and tell us. We think we're the best in Northwest Indiana with rail, arteries. Tell us. You tell us what's better. He came back and said, there is nothing better. This is the team you're going to be working with moving forward. That team, to the day we signed the contracts, remained the same. And they worked with us from cash, willing to come in to work on repairs and renovate that old escalator. Finally got the money to work with that. All right, bathrooms are being renovated right now. So we're looking at them not just adding to the bathrooms, but changing the durability and the use of those restrooms to be family oriented, to make sure that those are durable, for whatever the time we're going to be using them. Maintenance and security, we've taken on 24/7 security. So it is 7 days a week and 24/7 coverage. And it has totally taken a different perspective to the community. We have had a lot of the Greyhound operators say, we don't have any place that we go in that looks like this. Thank you. Most times we feel that people, did they? Okay. And so, I always need to know what the numbers are accurately before I talk to them. So we also have Hammond and Maryville who are coming in for those dollars. And in fact, there's been some discussion on how they want that increased and what are we going to do on a reoccurring basis, because both of them have substantial movement. With our universities, Calumet College received that $5 million Lilly. They have written us into that as well because they want to expand all of the busing and the routes around Calumet College because of the dormitory, which if you recall, we talked about that the dormitories are making a difference from the students wanting to get to destinations, and they want to explore Northwest Indiana through the buses. So we're getting ready to close on that deal this week as well. Anything else? So I think that those are the full scope of things that have been, we did get a partner that we thought was going to give more. I just want to say that we're not done. We're coming back to say, indeed, how can you not give this only transit hub in Northwest Indiana some funding? And with it being regional, we've hit all the buttons. So we'll need support, and I'll be talking to you all individually about that as well in moving forward, because we have been twice. And on both points, it didn't just downgrade, it went to, no, this is not something we will do at this time, but we feel like that's okay. It just says at this time. And we're ready to come back 1st of December to go and do this again with the ask. And the ask is definitely a repetitive, reoccurring cost that Gary deserves.
Okay, I know my colleague, Councilman Williams, had a question, and so I will entertain his question at this time.
Hey, I'm sorry. Good evening.
Good evening.
I am thrilled to hear the advancements that you're making with public transportation. Safety wise, I feel that things have improved downtown around the transit situation. How many, or have we secured transit police officers to assist?
I've got 2 for each shift, and we've got 3 shifts right now.
We have 3 shifts.
And what we're working with, for those of you who know the infrastructure, that tunnel going to the platform.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that was hard for us was to find out who's supposed to be taking care of that. All right, so of course we are doing it because we have passengers and we want them to be safe. But oddly enough, I have a contract that says it's not supposed to be just us. So we've had that conversation to say, indeed, we will help and continue, but a lot of the movement of our population, when things are secured, they find another place to go.
Right.
And the other place to go is the platform, because my people are not posted there.
Right.
So this is something that we're getting ready to do, because although we want every station to be secure and safe, we are not saying, don't stop in Gary, go to Miller.
Right.
We're saying we have a safe place right here.
Yeah.
And this is what we're going to provide for everybody.
Because I think a lot of the residents feel that the reason that the train is pretty much located in Miller is because they feel that the stop in Gary is not safe. So,
Well, the one thing that occurred that it was when I first started was Royal Excursion,
okay.
which was the NICTY buses and your transit police. They only dealt with the people coming out of their cars to the train. They did not deal with the area.
Okay.
And the perimeter was totally unsecured until we said, no. And I actually had a meeting with them. And when I say them, the transit police and NICTY administrators at Gary Public Transportation, to say, indeed, all of our citizens deserve protection, not just one group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I told him, if I'm seeing this wrong, please correct me now. So as we moved forward, relationships started getting built. And before you knew it, they were actually saying good morning, when we came in. And they were looking at our clients, our customers, as their customers. But that took a bit.
Okay.
So yes, thank you for your noticing, and thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other colleague, any other questions? Okay. So when you were giving the overview in terms of the funding sources to the question that I proposed, I don't have the total. What was the total amount that all sources have supported?
It's about $2.4 million, absent this 750.
And the county's support was in the terms of what?
County gave $1 million.
Okay, so you're asking us to give about 75% of that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mrs. Dillard mentioned one other who hasn't given that we're going to go back to. That's the Regional Development Authority.
Okay, but the total is still 2.4, including
Yes.
their support, right?
Yes.
So 2.4. So 75. 2, 4. All right, so that's about 31% of that you all are asking for the council or the city of Gary to support.
Yes.
And the city of Gary represents what percent of ridership? Approximately
Approximately 50%.
50% of ridership. And do we have any other statistics in terms of like other municipalities that have high visible residents a part of our, what do you call that, customer base?
Yes. You know, that's one of the big things that we were talking to the other mayors about.
I
If
guess
I'm-
my question, let me go ahead and get it out. Are they supporting in terms of?
Money?
Yes.
Yes, I understand. I heard your question. Okay. Yes, and they are indeed. What has been interesting is one of the mayors quickly said to me, "We'll give you what we gave you, but we don't have any more money." And then I said, "So what are you giving to the RDA?" And they said $3 million. I said, "What are you getting for your transit transportation?" And they said 0. And I said, "Can we talk?" And they said, "Absolutely. Absolutely." And then that mayor called 2 other mayors to say, indeed, we need to collectively work on this. And if I'm correct, they had a meeting with, or were scheduling a meeting with Mayor Melton, so that they wanted to know that they were in full support of moving that forward. So that's why we also said we are preparing a different presentation, same notes, same numbers, nothing's changed, but it will not be a conversation with 2 people. It will be a conversation with their board. And that did not occur last time.
But the other thing I would add is, looking at the numbers, they aren't doing enough. And so that's our ask, is that the bus goes down Broadway, Maryville, goes out to Hammond, and we believe they should pay more, and that's what we're asking for.
And just for you know some of the data with that, when you're looking at some of the communities and you're talking that you've got over X number of miles that are wearing not just on the bus, but we've had to put 2 buses out there just to keep up with the ridership.
Right.
Yeah, we have people like Strax saying, "Can you stay open an extra hour so we can get people back from work?" So to your point, one of the biggest uses that we're seeing is Hammond. The other one was Maryville. The newest one was Calumet College. And north and south, it's very strong, obviously, with the BMX, but also east and west. When you're talking about, as you're coming over by Strax, that is a very busy community where we're getting a lot of riders.
Okay. Which is great, but to Pastor's point,
Show me the money.
there you go. There you
We
go.
good.
And my last question is probably a question for the administration. This request is asking for us to support this as a part of our revenue loss total. What will be the balance that we will have from that total calculation if this is in fact supported by the council?
And the t-
The balance subtracting the 750,000 will be 4,697,000.
4.6 million?
Yes.
Okay. And the second ordinance that we have is also an ask from revenue loss too, right, Ms. Alita?
This is the only one for revenue loss.
Okay.
We will bring another one later for the balance.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, that was concludes my questioning, and I thank you so much for indulging in that. I don't think the body has any additional questions, and so we appreciate the background. Our next Gary County Council meeting is on November the 19th, right? Yeah, next Tuesday, and so we'll move it for vote at that date. CPO 2024.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. CPO 2024-67 is just the companion ordinance for the appropriation, as we have communicated since the onset of the ARPA distribution. There is a requirement for us to do any ARPA spending in 2 parts, one being an allocation to adjust the spending plan, and then the second part in ordinance form as well, to identify the actual appropriation for the funding. And so I'm not going to ask for an additional overview for the appropriation ordinance, which is 2024-67. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is 2024-70. This is respective to a new animal shelter. And I'll ask for an overview from the administration.
Good afternoon, President, Common Council members, Ways and Means Committee. Thank you for having me and entertaining this ordinance. I appreciate it. This dates back, I kind of want to date myself. I started the city of Gary as a city employee in 1999 as an animal control worker. So this is something that I definitely hold dear to my heart in reference to the need. Back even in 1999, there was a need for an animal control shelter. This situation has been prolonged over years. Currently, the current facility was built in 1930 and it's approximately 2,200 square feet. The building has had multiple challenges, including heating, HVAC, and other structural issues, and it's just not really conducive not only to the employees, but to the animals that we take in and also the citizens that we ask to come and conduct the city business with. Currently, we are able to house about approximately 20 animals, and that's a combination of animals, whether it be domesticated cats or dogs, and then we are over that capacity quite frequently. So there's definitely a need to expand. In that expansion or in the current facility that we have right now, we have no area for quarantining, which leads to disease and which leads to us fighting to keep animals safe and also employees safe in that particular structure. This has been a situation where we have, over time, tried to do patchwork to try to get this situation up to speed, and it's really becoming like a health concern at this point. And so I'm asking that the council would consider the passage of this ordinance in reference to being able to acquire a new animal shelter.
Thank you. So thank you for that, Chief. I think that you failed to state on the record the amount of the ask, which is $1 million. And so I want to know more details about that amount, the justification for $1 million, what else is going there other than the ability to house 20 animals, and if in fact you all have actually done a case study and actually forecast the amount to get to $1 million.
Sure. So $1 million is probably on the low end of trying to facilitate a structure, whether it be a new build or rehab of a building. Currently, we have looked at other facilities that are in the area of more than that. What we are doing right now is making sure that we contact funding sources when it comes to like nonprofits we're working with right now to make sure once we get the structure up and going that we can actually facilitate business there. So we are in the area of trying to get the 1 million and then scale appropriately as we have funding to do so. So right now, I would say that the current conditions that we have, 1 million would probably be on the low end as far as the asking price.
Okay, so you said on the low end, so what's the high end and what's the mid end?
So the open bid, we had just did a open bid for a new facility. The number came in at $3.4 million.
So you did an open bid, and what was in the scope of work of the bid?
There was certain, I don't have the square footage available right now in front of me, but there was a square footage that was allotted. There was design work that was allotted, and then that facility was to be based at property that the city already owns as far as the land.
Okay, so I would like to see that. I would like to see justification for $1 million, and also if in fact the bid came up at what was it?
3.4 million.
3.4. What other funding sources are you all going out to obtain the balance of that? If in fact that is the target that you're looking to do, and lastly, the location.
So, Madam President, I can answer some of those questions, but also still forward you the actual bid that was public, that was made public. It was an 80-foot by 100-foot steel frame building that was a prefab building that was trying to keep a reasonable cost. The bid, the responser did also include all of the outfitting. That included cages, the ability for a sally port for them to pull in when they are offloading animals, as well as the essential adoption area. We've been advised, and when talking to some of the other communities like Fort Wayne, who has a state-of-the-art facility, The adoption area is key to try to get those animals that have been saved properly adopted into the community, as well as a space for, as Chief just talked about, working with a nonprofit to provide some services like spay and neutering, as well as other things, chipping for the animals. So that was the space, and then the space that we are looking at, which is on, that we put in the bid, was on 11th and Madison. That is that corner that is currently owned as the front half of the general services space. That would allow, if given the opportunity to have that space, that we can still utilize our current space, of course, to not cease operations for animal control, but then look at trying to figure out new space.
Okay, so that's in my district. What's the neighborhood stabilization plan for that area? Other than this $3.4 million facility, what else are you all planning on to build in that area?
Not understanding the question, I'm sorry.
So that area is deserted, blighted, right? And if we're going to invest in infrastructure in upwards of $3.4 million, my question is there a plan to stabilize that whole neighborhood as a whole, instead of just dropping a $3.4 million facility without a plan to develop the surrounding community?
Well, I believe, again, one of the biggest pieces that I think was going to be presented is the overall plan the mayor has in regards to neighborhood stabilization for every community, including the blight elimination and remediation. That plan that's pretty aggressive that involves that neighborhood. I cannot say offhand, but I can review and try to get back to you.
So
to
as
see
of
if there's-
today, we don't have anything that we know that's in the pipeline for execution that would be a complementary asset to this particular infrastructure today.
No.
Okay, all right. And then you all got the $3.4 million from the bid, and I'm assuming that number was selected out of whatever proposals that you obtained because it was the most reasonable and most responsive?
Correct.
Okay, and so usually that means the lowest, I'm assuming?
Well, no, necessarily the lowest. There were other individuals who submitted. The biggest piece is that we didn't want to tie individuals' hands, and so we wanted to see what an outfitted space based on, again, accommodating roughly about the same operations that the animal control covers now was in that space. We believe that coming back with a probably more fixed budget, if you look at that previous budget, previous RFP that went out, it did not have a budgeted amount, and it allowed for us to try to figure out what was the most reasonable and responsive for the need. We believe that we can scale back if approved and those funds are approved.
Yeah, well, usually RFPs, you wouldn't put what your targeted range is, right? Because you don't want to
Limit.
correct. You don't want to show what your budget is, right? So that would make sense. But I guess I'm trying to understand the timeline and the plan to secure under other funding sources versus the council just putting up a whole $1 million without that being in the works as well. And it's just right now you all are just searching for what those funding sources are going to be, unless I misinterpreted what the chief said.
No, we've having some very serious conversations at this time. I can't, because they haven't been secure. I don't want to put those out before they have been secured and commit anyone before they've made their commitments public. But also, too, we do know that time is of the essence for earmarking the dollars. Our goal with trying to RFP it was to be able to come to the council with a more fixated why of the cost. And that was the goal, not to jump and say that the funds are secure or anything like that, but to try to give some more specifics, especially when it comes to design. And we're happy to share the public. We did open them at the Board of Public Works, the design that was initially proposed before it. But again, having an opportunity to go back to those same contractors and or put out another RFP to ask it based on a more precise budget.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. So you all did an RFP and you obtained a price point of $3.4 million. And then you all decided to ask the council to support 29% of that total. And you said that the balance, because $21 million out of 3.4 is 29%. And then you said the balance of this, let's just round up to 30%. So the other 70% of the funding is going to come from other funding sources that we're trying to identify at this time.
Yeah, and part of it too is some of those other conversations we're having with those other entities, and their commitment is ensuring as well some of the sources. So we're willing to again talk about those or give those as we can within. I don't know if legally we can give it within executive privilege or what that looks like, but we can share how serious those conversations are. Part of it is saying, hey, we want to make sure before we make our commitment that there are other funds that the city has stake in this outside of just operating the facility.
Okay. So I have a problem, and it's not a hard problem, but I just want to understand if we commit $1 million to just what ifs. And it's what ifs to us because we don't know additional funding sources to support the other 70%, which is a substantial portion that is needed to do the execution of the infrastructure, right? And I'm assuming in the 3.4 million, that also includes any demo costs or site-ready costs that you all will also have to do. That's correct, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I think, and how I want to say this, because time is of essence, and we are in the 10th hour. Is there such thing as a 10th hour? And I say 9th hour, the 10th hour, right?
We are in the 10th hour.
This body has previously done that, where we have appropriated, well, we didn't appropriate, we allocated $5 million to this fictitious Department of Health, right, facility that it was, hey, we're going to put it up and we're going to hope and it's going to be a what if and additional funding sources are going to come through. And so I don't want to do that. So anything that is concrete at this time that the administration could show that we do have execution plans, we do have commitment letters from these funding sources, and I'm only 1 vote out of 9, but that's what I would like to have confidence in this 10th hour to execute. I do understand the need of an animal shelter. $1 million is a lot of money, but I know that it's a need. And Chief can tell you, I done called him for squirrels and deer and foxes and everything else in the 4th district. So I know that we're talking about, neutering animals and a whole process, right? I don't want to make light of the situation. So I want to be clear that I understand that it's detrimental, but I also want to be clear about fiscal responsibility and understanding our ability to actually obtain 70% of this cost from these other funders before this body says yes to $1 million, right? So I just want you all to present that to us in any way that you all deem appropriate, just so we can have confidence in the actual execution of the plan.
Yes, absolutely. If we will make sure we send it over.
Okay.
And I don't know how that can be presented, but again, some of that is not for.
We got it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Any other comments, colleagues? Councilman Washington.
Yes, to the Chief of Staff and to the Police Chief, please get that information to us because I don't think people really understand the need for animal control because, Ellis, in our past life, there are houses with 50, 60 cats. People pick up strays, and if something happens, you have houses that have 7 or 8 dogs. I see cats going all over the place. So when animal control is called, and to come to a house, sometimes you have to vacate that house. That house is full of feces, full of everything, and you got to try to find a place to put all of those animals. And I don't think people understand they had out in abandoned buildings, everything. And there are people in our city, Madam President, that make their business to just like pick up stray cats and dogs and like feed them. And when something happens, you have to go in that house. You see like a whole lot of cats and dogs in that one house. And the house should be condemned. So I understand, we understand, but I got to stick by my president. We want to know where that money is going and that it is a solid plan for that shelter to ensure that it can do what the money says it's going to do. But what you're doing, I totally understand. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman Washington. Councilman Williams.
Yeah, I have a simple question. In the past, how many, because we only deal with dogs and cats, right?
So we deal with anything that could be considered a health emergency. We do, utilize other entities that deal with certain situations like raccoons. That is a private industry situation.
Yeah.
But if there's a situation of immediate health or danger, animal control does go out and assess the situation.
So in the past, how many, just saying like in the year, How many dogs or cats do you think we took in and put in the shelter?
You talking about capacity, how many we
Yeah,
would get
capacity,
in?
yeah.
I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say they're roughly about 15 to 20 animals a week.
A week.
Yes. And then just to kind of expand on some of the other situations, I mean, whatever has been brought to the city of Gary, whether it's a snake, an alligator, a rooster, a cow, a goat, or whatever the situation is, a horse, animal control has dealt with those issues.
Okay, my next question. The 6th district is starting to become overrun by a lot of chickens and roosters. And I pointed that out to code enforcement. What can we do about that?
Yeah, so code enforcement has been on that. I've fielded some of those calls with animal control. We do work closely with them. Of course, we try to work with the citizen first about making sure that they get the situation under control, whether that's removing the fowl or what have you against the city code. And then if it has to come down to confiscation, sometimes that happens too.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Councilman Williams, and thank you, Chief Cannon. Any other colleague, any comments or questions? Okay, very good. This is a general comment about, as we are working through our ARPA spending plan projects, I should say, for the balance. I had requested to the administration that we do a cleanup, and I've requested that multiple times. Here, my girl, she going to the podium already. So, Controller Green, could you help me out with our plan and just making sure that we clean up the ones that we've already allocated, that we know we have different plans for some of those initiatives. And yes, ma'am.
We have done that. We have the ordinances that will go, I've gone to the law department, so should be coming to the clerk on Wednesday. And so we are withdrawing about, I think it's $22 million out of the plan.
Okay.
And the amount for the appropriations is $149,000.
Okay. But I want to make sure that those projects that this body deemed important are not lost, right?
Yes.
That there is still a plan of action to execute those. It doesn't necessarily need to be ARPA, but infrastructure plans in the future. I want to be clear about that. One of them was lights. We've already tackled that. The other one is the sidewalk issues that we have, right? Paving was another one. And we know that we're collectively working together for that demo change. I'm going to say transition, right? We're going to transition those funds to support our overall blight elimination program.
Yes.
And off the top of my head, I think that was it.
So
I want to make sure that, we don't lose sight of some of those.
So they may look a little different,
Yes, ma'am.
meaning that the 50/50 sidewalk may not still be there as it was listed,
Yes, ma'am.
but there's a total amount for infrastructure that's under lost revenue
Okay.
that would accommodate all of those paving, the sidewalks, and all of those areas.
Okay.
Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you, Controller Green.
You're welcome.
And we'll make sure that those are going to be on first reading on the 19th, right? Because
They're ready.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. So that's great. Great news. Colleagues, any questions, comments? Attorney Molina, anything you want to add? Okay, I just wanted to put him on the spot. He's so sweet. We didn't have any member of the public sign up to discuss any of these ordinances, but we will review both of these. I'll say all four, but it's two major projects. So 24, 66, 67, 70, and 71 at the next Gary Common Council meeting, which will take place next Tuesday, November the 19th at 6 p.m. here in the council chamber. That concludes the meeting from Ways and Means. Thank you so much for joining. And now the meeting is adjourned at 6:22. Thank you.